Typical alcohol policies include checking ID for every customer who looks under 30 years of age. Your employer may also require all employees to undergo a training program like this before you start your job. And many employers also keep a logbook of all alcohol-related sales refusals. It's your responsibility to know your employer's policies and to carry them out in your job. Be sure to ask for and review your company's policy and procedures for alcohol sales. And always ask questions if there is something you're unsure of. Remember, you need to protect yourself as well as your job. As an employee who sells alcohol, you also have rights as well as individual responsibilities. As you can see, selling alcohol is a serious job. You must be alert and confident in every situation. You need to be informed not only about what the laws are, but also your legal rights when it comes to the sale of alcohol. Remember, you have a right to ask for ID. It's the only way you have to establish legal proof of age. Never rely on a coworker or anyone else to vouch for a person's age. The number one way to prevent underage alcohol sales is to always ask for ID from anyone who looks under age 30 and to perform a thorough ID check. There are only 4 types of ID that are considered legally acceptable to prove a customer's age for purchasing alcohol. These include a state driver's license, a U.S. passport, a U.S. government ID, or a U.S. military ID. All of these types of ID contain photos, signatures, birth dates, physical descriptions, and expiration dates. Don't be fooled by customers who try to give you credit cards, library cards, or any other types of ID. You also have a right to take the time you need to carefully check ID. Don't be distracted when customers claim that they're in a hurry. They may be trying to rush you on purpose to force you into a sale that shouldn't happen. Here's a 6-step process that you should follow when checking any of the 4 types of ID. First, check the expiration date on the ID. The most common error that employees make is accepting ID that is already expired. Take a moment to compare the expiration date with today's date. Some stores are equipped with ID scanners that automatically check for expired IDs. If the expiration date is passed, the ID is not valid, so do not accept it. Second, take the time to figure out the age of the customer. To do that, subtract the birth date on the ID from today's date. If the person is under age 21, he or she cannot purchase alcohol. Even if the year of the birth date comes to be 21, be sure that the month and day have already passed. The third step is to look for and study the signature on all ID. All valid ID must be signed. If you suspect that the ID doesn't belong to the customer in front of you, ask the customer to sign his or her name on a piece of paper and compare it with the signature on the ID. After you've checked the signature, compare the photo on the ID to the customer in front of you. Keep in mind that the color and even amount of people's hair can change over time. But look closely at the person's eyes and nose to determine whether the customer is the true owner of the ID you're checking. Law enforcement officers often look at the distance between the eyes as a good measure of whether the ID matches the person. Feel the surface of the ID. Fake IDs often have cracks or bumps because the lamination is not properly sealed. Do not accept ID that looks or feels as if it has been altered. And the final step in the process is to ask additional questions if you have any doubt about the age of the customer or about the validity of the ID. For example, ask for a street address or a zip code. Notice whether the customer hesitates or answers incorrectly. This may indicate that the customer is using a fake ID. If you have any doubts about a customer's age or ID at any point in the 6-step process, you have the right and responsibility to refuse the sale. And just like denying sales to intoxicated persons, you don't need to provide an explanation. But you can refer the customer to your manager or supervisor. Be confident and calm, and be sure to get your supervisor if the situation becomes difficult. Let's review the 6-step ID check.
Check the expiration on the ID. It is not valid if it has expired. Figure out the customer's age by subtracting the birth date year from the present year. Find the signature. All valid ID must be signed. Compare the photo to the customer in front of you. Feel the surface of the ID. Do not accept if it feels bumpy. Ask additional questions if you have any doubt about the age of the customer or about the validity of the ID.
It is your right to deny alcohol to any customer you suspect is underage or intoxicated. As long as you are not violating the customer's civil rights, you can refuse the sale. This is absolutely your right. If it turns out you were wrong, you are not at fault for making this decision. But be sure you handle all situations with customers in a calm and respectful manner. Also keep in mind that you have a right to document any difficult situations that you experience when selling alcohol. As soon as the customer leaves, it's a good idea to take a few minutes to write down a brief description of what happened. That way, if a customer complains later, you'll have an accurate description of the event rather than having to rely on your memory. And that's especially important if the store is busy and you're dealing with a lot of customers. Finally, it is your right to expect support from your supervisor. As an employee, you have the right to safe working conditions. And this includes counting on your supervisor's support in difficult situations. Talk with your supervisor about what you can expect when customers are rude or threatening, and know who to go to for help. Let's review those rights one more time.
It is your responsibility to ask for ID. Never rely on a coworker to verify the age of a customer. You have a right to deny an alcohol purchase to a customer. Document difficult situations or call local police. Expect support from your supervisor. Know state laws.
Because individual sellers can be fined or arrested for breaking the law. Remember, ignorance of the law is no excuse for breaking the law. The law clearly states that it is illegal to sell alcohol to a person who is visibly intoxicated. But the law is unclear as to what visibly intoxicated means. Here are a few things to look for. Slurred speech, speaking loudly or inappropriately, smell of alcohol, and loss of coordination such as swaying when walking, dropping change, or fumbling with money. It is your right and responsibility to refuse an alcohol sale to a person you suspect is intoxicated. Here are some tips for handling this kind of difficult situation. First, remove the alcohol from the counter. This is something you would need to do anyway in order to bag the purchase. Then politely inform the customer that you are unable to sell the alcohol. Don't feel that you have to give them an explanation. You don't. It may begin an argument you don't want to have. Instead, refer them to your manager or supervisor. If a customer becomes very upset, be sure to get your manager immediately. After the customer leaves, it is a good idea to write down a brief description of the incident. This may even help your defense in a court of law and your employer if an intoxicated person leaves the store, then later gets in an accident and tries to blame you or your employer for selling alcohol. In addition to what you've learned today about preventing sales to underage youth, here are a few more suggestions that will help you detect if someone under 21 is trying to buy alcohol. Don't be fooled by the following: large groups coming in and trying to distract your attention, underage buyers trying to sound older or saying they forgot their ID. Another common tactic to be aware of is called shoulder tapping. This is when a teenager asks an adult to buy alcohol for them. This is also called second-party sales. Be aware, if you knowingly sell alcohol to an adult who in turn supplies the alcohol to anyone underage, you may be held legally responsible. Also, don't be pressured into selling alcohol to friends who are under 21. If you sell to minors, the consequence is yours to bear.